Hello everyone and welcome back for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets and drama. So I'm back for another Have Your Say video, and this video is for Season 16 Episode 10. So I'll be recapping what happened in the episode, going through the results of the Have Your Say poll where you get to vote on whether you agree with the outcome of the episode, and I'll be talking about a little bit of drama involving Roxxxy Andrews calling out Megami for being disrespectful. All that and more coming up in today's video, so let's get started. So let's first start by recapping the episode. The queens come back into the workroom after Plasma's elimination, and the queens say that Maya is now the lip sync assassin because she has won 3 lip syncs. There also seems to be some tension between Morphine and Maya after Morphine made a joke about Saphira making Maya's dress for her last episode, and Maya said that she would beat Morphine in a lip sync. And this did feel to me a little bit random and out of left field because we haven't really seen that much interaction between Morphine and Maya, even though they're both from Miami. The next day, the queens come back into the workroom and they find out that the maxi challenge for this week is that the queens have to write and record their own verses for a political anthem called Power. While the queens are working on their verses, we're reminded that this is the last week where Plain Jane can use her immunity potion, and Morphine says that she's being nice to Plain just in case she needs it. But from what Plain Jane was saying, it kind of sounds like she's not planning on giving the potion to anyone, but we'll come back to that a bit later. One of the unintentionally funny moments I thought was when Maya was reading out her lyrics and she rhymed the word equal with equal. And the other queens also seemed to be a bit confused, and it's not clear whether it was because of the editing or not, but Maya seemed to be very confident and didn't seem to think that she needed to rewrite it. And I just found this kind of funny, and we have seen this a few other times on Drag Race where queens have some questionable rhymes in their lyrics, but let me know in the comments what you thought about this. The other interesting thing that happened is that Nymphia Wynn said that she was struggling with her lyrics, but Dawn didn't seem to be buying it because, as we know, Nymphia has done this sort of thing a few times now and said that she can't do something, but then she always seems to do it really well. And for me at least, it's hard to tell whether Nymphia is doing this on purpose because she's genuinely nervous and feels like she can't do things, or is she just doing this because it's part of her process and how she creatively works? Let me know in the comments what you think about this. So the queens then go to record their vocals with Leland, and they do the typical thing where they show some queens doing really well and then some queens struggling, and often this is usually to set up a narrative for later in the episode. I did find it interesting though that Plain Jane struggled with recording, because this is really the only time so far that we've seen Plain struggle, and this is kind of relevant later in the episode. The queens then move on and they start learning the choreography with Jamal Sims. And again, they show several queens struggling, such as Plain Jane, and I think this was some kind of foreshadowing for later in the episode, because they also showed Q struggling, and this has been quite a big storyline with Q struggling with the dancing. But they also showed Dawn struggling with the choreo, which I thought was interesting again, because we haven't really seen Dawn struggling with that much so far in the competition. Okay, so now let's move on to the queens' performances in the main challenge and their verses in the song. I'll go through each queen in order in which they appeared. So first up we had Dawn. I think Dawn did a pretty good job. I liked her lyrics and I thought they spoke to her style of drag, and it was all about therapy and your inner child. And I thought this was a really good message. The only slight thing I thought is if we look at the lyrics according to genius.com, Dawn didn't really say anything about voting, and that was kind of the main theme of the challenge. So I think compared to some of the other queens' lyrics, I did feel that this was a slight missed opportunity. I do also agree with what the judges said that perhaps Dawn is not the best dancer, but I do think she sold it overall and it was a decent performance. Next we had Maya Iman LePage. I thought Maya did a great job in this performance, and she does always do really well in these sort of performances because she showcases her legendary flipping, and it's also obvious that Maya lights up on stage and she's a great dancer. I did think her lyrics could have maybe been slightly stronger though, and Leland did try to make Maya make the whole rhyming of the word equal with equal into a kind of a thing and make it funny, but I don't think Maya managed to make that work, and in the song it kind of just came across as a bit clumsy, unfortunately. But overall, I thought the message behind her lyrics were good, and she did make it obvious that the lyrics were about voting, which was the point of the challenge. Next we had Morphine Love Dion. Morphine was definitely one of my favourites from the challenge. Her lyrics were really strong and she made it very clear that the message in her verse was to get up and vote. I also thought she performed to the song really well and her dancing was on point. And she always looks amazing with her makeup, but I just think she came across really natural on stage this week and she really sold it, and for me she was definitely one of the best. Next we had Nymphia Wind. Nymphia definitely had the least amount of lyrics out of everyone if we look at them, but I actually didn't mind that really, because sometimes when the queens try and say too much in a verse and they speak too quickly, I often have the problem that I just can't understand them. However, I will say that compared to Nymphia's verse that she had in the girl group challenge, which we have since found out that Megami actually kind of wrote for her, I do think that Nymphia's verse in this song was lacking a little bit of substance, and it didn't quite have the impact that some other people's verses did. I did think her dancing was good though, and compared to Plain Jane, who we'll talk about next, I thought Nymphia at least seemed quite at ease and looked quite good while doing the choreo. So I thought this was a safe performance, but perhaps could have been a bit better. So next we had Plain Jane. Plain kind of surprised me in this challenge because in the girl group challenge, she was quite funny and seemed quite at ease with everything. But in this performance, I thought she looked quite stiff, especially compared to Nymphia, and it's probably the first time that we've really seen Plain Jane not do very well in a challenge. Looking at Plain's lyrics, I thought they were okay, and she did mention the polls and therefore implied voting, which is obviously the challenge. Although I thought it wasn't that clear what the verse was about, and the part about her spreading her legs also didn't seem to make much sense in the context of the rest of the verse. As usual, I thought Plain looked great and she's always giving body, but overall this was not my favourite performance, and I think that it just seemed to lack a little bit of the polish that we've come to expect from Plain Jane. So next we had Q. For me, the main issue I had with Q's verse, and I'm not sure if it was just me, but I just couldn't really understand much of what she was saying because I feel like she was speaking so fast because she had so many words. If we look at Q's lyrics, I think she definitely had a good message, and it was definitely clear at the end that she was talking about voting, but I just think they were just too many words, and therefore the message just kind of got a bit lost for me. I quite liked Q's outfit in the performance though, even though it's not her usual style. I thought it was quite fun and whimsical. But she did seem a bit stiff in the dancing, which we've maybe come to expect, and it has been something that's been talked about before. So unfortunately, this wasn't my favourite of the performances. And finally, we had Sapphira Cristál. Sapphira was definitely one of my favourites in this performance. She just came across as so natural and she knew exactly what she wanted to do. Her lyrics were not only powerful, but I also thought they were meaningful, and out of everyone I thought she really nailed the element of voting and encouraging people to vote, which was the whole point of the challenge. I also thought Sapphira did the choreo so well, and she was so effortless when she did that sliding split across the stage, and then she got up again and just made it look so easy. And overall, she came across as being the most polished performer in my opinion, and I do think that she just completely knocked it out of the park and really did well this week. Okay, so now let's move on to the runway for this week, and the category was True Colours. So as usual, I won't be critiquing the actual looks, but I'll just give an overview of how the queens described their looks in order in which they appeared, and I'll also say which of the outfits was my favourite. So first up we had Maya Iman Lepage, who said she chose the colour red because it's her favourite colour and makes her feel like a quote slut, and she said that she's giving appliqué, feathers and pure fierceness. Next we had Nymphia Wind, who did yellow, and Nymphia joked that she had to think long and hard about which colour to choose, but she obviously went for her signature colour, which is banana yellow. Nymphia also said she's giving Josephine Baker, and for those of you who don't know, she was a famous American-born French dancer, singer and actress who at one point famously wore a banana skirt. And Nymphia said she's a gorgeous banana tree waiting to be plucked and digested. Next we have Plain Jane, who chose the colour green, and Plain said that green represents nature, money and opulence, and Plain Jane represents all three of those. And she said the dress is giving pageant realness with green stones cascading into geometric shapes on top of a mesh nude illusion dress. Next we had Sapphira Cristál, who chose the colour blue, and Sapphira said that she is blue from head to toe, and it's not just blue, but royal blue. And she said she's channeling Queen Charlotte from Bridgerton with a huge circle skirt, and she also has the tallest wig there's probably ever been on the stage. Next we had Dawn, who also chose blue, and she said she's serving sleepy bedtime friend, and it's all made out of material that she would have found in her childhood bedroom. And she had navy blue corduroy because it's her safe and calm colour, and the outfit is also a little spooky. Then we had Q, who chose the colour lavender because she said it makes her feel so pretty. And Q was wearing a really large fringe hat that has lots of movement when she walks, and she also made the wide leg pants with pleated ruffling and beaded lavender fringe. And if she's going to give you one single colour, she's going to give you texture and silhouette. And finally, we had Morphine, who chose the colour Royal Purple because she said it speaks to glamour and sex. She said the hat is made of ostrich feathers dyed in deep royal purple, and she stoned the entire outfit with Swarovski crystals, and she loves to show off her body, and this is her Met Gala moment. And overall, I think my favourite of these runways was definitely Saphira. My favourite colour is also blue, so perhaps I'm a little biased, but I just thought Saphira looked so incredible, and the outfit was huge, and I have no idea how Saphira fit that in her luggage. But the details in the outfit were just so exquisite and intricate, and I think it really was just giving ultimate opulence. Or opulence, you own everything. So, moving on to the judges' critiques, and Plain Jane was offered the chance to use her immunity potion for the last time. And I don't know about you, but I thought Plain was going to use it for herself because she probably was one of the weaker performances this week in my opinion. But in a total twist, Plain said that she was going to give the potion to one of her sisters, and I thought she might give it to Morphine because the two of them seem to be quite close and they are drag sisters. But Plain instead gave it to Nymphia Wind, and I was really surprised by this, and Nymphia also seemed to be really surprised. We had seen earlier in the episode that Nymphia had asked Plain for the potion, but I didn't think Plain was actually going to give it to her because Nymphia is probably one of the strongest competitors in the season. So this really did shock me, but let me know in the comments if you expected this to happen or not. So Nymphia takes the potion and is called safe, and then of the remaining girls, from the critiques, the top 4 are Saphira, Morphine, Dawn and Maya, and the bottom 2 are Plain and Q. We then see that all the queens except Saphira and Morphine are called safe, and we find out that because this is a political episode, there will be no eliminations. Saphira and Morphine as the top 2 then lip sync for the win, and they lip sync to the song Made You Look by Meghan Trainor, and Saphira won the lip sync. Okay, so now let's move on to the results of the Have Your Say poll. So question 1 was, do you agree with the outcome of this week's episode, i.e. tops, bottoms and elimination? And we had 66.2% for yes and 33.8% for no. So the majority of you did agree with the outcome of the episode, but still quite a lot of people, over a third, said no. And I assume this has something to do with the non-elimination element, but we'll come on to that later. Question 2 was, in your opinion, who should have won this week? And with a vast majority of 72.8%, we had Saphira Cristál. And I do definitely agree with this. I thought Saphira did incredibly well in the performance and was probably the best. But I also thought her outfit, as I said earlier, was my favourite and that was also the best. And she did win the lip sync as well. So I think overall this was an incredible week for Saphira. We also had Morphine Love Dion with 19.8%, which also makes sense because she was in the top 2. And then the other two that have highish amount of votes are Nymphia Wind and Maya Iman LePage with 1.7. Question 3 was, in your opinion, who should have been eliminated this week? And this seemed to be relatively split, but we did have Q with 41.1%, so it seemed like the majority of people thought that Q did the weakest in the challenge. And unfortunately, I guess I would have to agree, I wasn't the biggest fan of Q in the performance, and I did think her outfit was good, but maybe wasn't quite at the standard we would normally expect from Q. But overall, I still thought it was a fun performance, and I don't think anyone did that badly. Next on the list we had Maya Iman LePage with 25.1%, and I guess this might be more to do with the fact that Maya has been in the bottom for several weeks before. I don't think she should have been in the bottom this week, so I do think she did do quite well in the challenge, but I think some people are of the opinion that Maya should have gone last week because she'd been in the bottom so many times. And then the rest of the votes were relatively split, so we had Plain Jane with 11.2%, Dawn with 11.8%, Nymphia Wind with 8.6%, and even Saphira Cristál with 1.2%, which I thought was really surprising. Question 4 was, in your opinion, who was the best in the challenge this week? And again, unsurprisingly, we had Saphira Cristál with 69.6%. And then we had Morphine Love Dion second with 22.9%. And then the rest of them were relatively split. So we had Dawn with 1.5% and Plain Jane with 1.1%. Question 5 was, in your opinion, who had the best runway look this week? And with the majority, we had Saphira Cristál with 53.9%. And as I said before, this was my favourite outfit, so I do think that I can see why people would also agree with that. Next we had Dawn with 14.3%, and I do think this was quite an interesting look for Dawn, and it was definitely something quite unexpected, so I can see why people would like this. And then in third place, we had Morphine Love Dion with 12.9%. And I do agree, I thought Morphine looked stunning this week and I really loved that colour. And then finally, question 6 was, in your opinion, who is the frontrunner so far, i.e. most likely to win the season? And perhaps unsurprisingly, because of this week, we had Sapphira Cristál with 65.6%. And I do think this makes sense because Sapphira did so well this week and she's also done really well in most of the other weeks. So I can see why she's top of the list. And what I think is also interesting is that Nymphia Wind has been consistently at the top in this particular question for most of the weeks, but she's now slipped to second place with only 20.8%. And I don't know if this is just because Nymphia didn't necessarily do that well this week, but she was safe because of the potion. And then in third place, we have Plain Jane with 11.2%. And I can see that because Plain has been pretty consistently good throughout the whole season. And I think this week was really the only week where she had a slight trip up. Okay, so moving on to the comments for this week. And on my Patreon, I had so many comments this week, so people clearly had a lot to say about it. So one of my Patreons, Shelby, said, "Girl, when I say I was panicking after critiques because Morphine got the top/winner edit, Sapphira slayed in the challenge and runway and I was about to toss my TV table if she was just safe. Still thought Sapphira should have won outright. This episode was weird all around, no elimination, 2 tops, immunity to Nymphia who didn't even need it, and please, as if they weren't going to send a queen home the last week of the immunity gag, yeah right, producers are producing." And this was a very common theme throughout most of the comments. So many people commented on the fact that it just seemed weird that there was a non-elimination, and quite a few people also said that perhaps the non-elimination was because several of the production favourites were in the bottom, so they were trying to save them from elimination. Interestingly, my Patreon Anna also said, "I recall reading somewhere that Nymphia and Plain were a hot item, possibly why she was offered the bottle." And I did look this up and I couldn't find any evidence to support this, so I'm not sure where this was from, but it would be an interesting theory as to why Plain gave the immunity to Nymphia, because that also was quite a big surprise to me. But who knows, maybe they're just friends, or maybe something happened off camera that we didn't see, but it was just a very big gag for me in this particular episode. My Patreon Lisa said, "I'm so glad Sapphira finally got her second win. It was so well deserved. Overall, this episode and Untucked were very wholesome and I really enjoyed it." And I do agree, I think it was a very wholesome episode and it was a very feel-good episode. But as to whether people agree with the no elimination, I guess is another story. Let me know in the comments what you thought about it. My patron Ashley said, "Nymphia and Sapphira top 2. And I don't know if I fully agree with this. I agree that Sapphira was definitely top 2 and I agree with that she won. I don't think Nymphia personally, in my opinion, was strong enough this week to be top 2. I thought she did decently well and she definitely did better than Plain Jane because the two of them were in the performance together. But overall, I don't think she was top 2 in my opinion this particular week." Another one of my Patreons, Amy, said, "I was fine with the episode, but I have to say I'm just not sure what the judges see in Maya. They obviously see something I don't, but I'm amazed that she is still in the competition. I just don't think her drag is the same calibre of the others. Flipping, brackets, which annoys me because it's a back handspring, not a flip, isn't enough to make a great queen." And I think this has been talked about a lot, people saying that Maya should have gone in previous weeks, but at the end of the day, I personally don't blame anyone for that apart from the judges, because the contestants themselves aren't the ones that make the decisions. Whether or not you like Maya, I do think she's a great performer and she is a great lip syncer, but we'll have to wait to see for next episode to see if she falls in the bottom again. And finally, my Patreon Rochelle said, "What the heck is Plain doing? This leaf she's turned over is a completely different species now. #confusion." And again, as I mentioned before, it was definitely a gag for me that Plain chose Nymphia to give her potion to. For what we've seen of Plain so far, she's been very kind of dramatic, maybe a little bit catty with the queens, but I do think in the last few episodes she has kind of changed a little bit and she doesn't seem to be quite as dramatic as she was. So perhaps Plain really has turned over a new leaf, but we'll definitely have to wait and see because it has been quite a big change from the start of the season to now. Okay, so now we're going to move on to a little bit of drama this week involving Roxxxy Andrews calling out Megami. So, as you know, Roxxxy Andrews competed on Season 5 and All Stars 2, and one of the things that was a big part of Roxxxy's storyline on Season 5 was that she admitted on the main stage that when she was a child, her mother abandoned her and her sister at a bus stop. And Roxxxy broke down on the main stage and said that she tries to come across as being strong, but really she feels weak. And this story became something that Roxxxy was quite well known for, and people also made jokes about it on the show. For example, during the reading challenge on All Stars 2, Katia said to Roxxxy, quote, "I think about you all the time, especially in the morning at the bus stop." Although Katia did tweet about this at the time, and she said that she did apologise to Roxxxy right after she said it, and Roxxxy apparently said it was okay. However, over the years, lots of other people have also made jokes about Roxxxy Andrews and the bus stop. But Roxxxy made it clear over the years that she did not appreciate these jokes, and in a Facebook post which I found on this Reddit thread from 8 years ago, Roxxxy said, "You ever want to see real horrible people in life? Read some of these comments. Shame on you all to take someone's darkest moment and laugh. Hope it makes you feel better. If they spit and laughed at Jesus and watched him die on a cross, I can definitely take it too. It's scary to know how people really show who they really are. I feel sorry for every one of you. For those of you who have my back on the comments, I truly thank you. Trust me, I am a stronger person than the boy who was 3 at that bus stop." And it looks like this issue of the bus stop joke was brought up again recently. So on Twitter, someone tweeted a video clip of season 16 contestant Megami performing at Roscoe's. And Megami was doing a lip sync performance to a mix of songs, and at one point the audio of Roxxxy talking about being left at the bus stop was used and people in the audience laughed. A Twitter user then retweeted this and tagged Roxxxy Andrews and asked her to respond. Roxxxy then replied to this and said, "Not time for foolishness, sad and disrespectful to add something like that in for laughs, why not just be funny?" Megami then replied to Roxxxy's tweet and said, "Before it all gets too crazy, this was a mix I made forever ago doing Whitney So Emotional with a bunch of dialogue clips of emotional drag race moments, more quoting famous moments from the show for the audience. But regardless of my intent, I clearly overstepped a boundary and used a moment that I shouldn't have, and I will absolutely take it out of the mix. Especially being on the other side, I understand how things like this affect us all a lot more clearly. You're clearly iconic and I wasn't trying to make fun of you. I will always own up to being wrong and I was here, and I legitimately apologise for that." Megami then followed this up with another tweet saying, "Also, at the end of the day, yes, people have made those jokes before, but once someone acknowledges how a joke made them feel, the only thing I can do is apologise and change. When you know better, you do better, and no, I know." And in the comments, some people defended Roxxxy and said that Megami should never have used this as part of her performance to begin with. But other people said that Megami had admitted she was wrong and apologised for it, so people should just let it go. And it doesn't look like Roxxxy or Megami have said any more about it since then, so we'll have to wait and see if anything else gets said about it. So there you go, there was the Have Your Say for Drag Race Season 16 Episode 10. Do you agree with the non-elimination of this week? And who do you think is going to win the season? Let me know in the comments. And I'd also like to give a huge shout out to all of my incredible Patreon members who support me every month and are just such an incredible community of love and support. In the Shantae You Stay tier, we have Anna, Becky, Charlie, David, Emmy, Linda and Shelby. And then in the You're a Winner Baby tier, we have Bailey, Christian, Emerald1508, Ethan, Kat, Lisa, PC Smush, Rachel, Rochelle and Sam. Thank you all so much for your incredible support. You're all legends. Your support is really such a massive help to my channel and really keeps it going. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate you all. And if you'd like to have your comment featured in my Have Your Say videos, as well as get early access to my videos and priority when submitting interview questions, please consider signing up to my Patreon and supporting my channel, and I'll put a link in the description. Please make sure you like, comment and share this video as it really helps support my channel. And of course, please make sure you hit the subscribe button to stay up to date about new uploads. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you'll join me again in future videos. Thank you, bye!